In today's video, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about the infield fly rule. This can be a confusing rule in both baseball and softball, so we're going to cover today everything you need to know. All right, so first let's define what is an infield fly rule and what is it doing for the game of baseball? What does it prevent from happening? So the scenario in which the infield fly rule is live is when there's less than 2 outs, so that means 0 outs or 1 out, and there's runners on first and second or the base is loaded. In those situations, if the batter was to hit a pop-up in the infield, the runners would have to stay close to their base because if they caught the ball and they were too far away, they would throw it back and then they would be caught in a double play. They would be doubled off that way. So because this is the case, that runners have to stay close, basically on the bag when there's a pop-up on the infield, smart infielders back in the day probably let these balls drop and then would immediately throw it to third, throw it to second, and get an easy double or triple play. And everyone's like, hey, that's not really fair. We're getting screwed over by the own rules of the fact that you have to wait till after they catch the ball to tag and then move to the next base. So if you're off the base and they catch the fly ball and they throw it back to the base before you get there, then you're going to be out. That's the rule that keeps you close to the base when there's a ball hit in the air. So the infield fly rule, the umpire will use their discretion to call infield fly when they believe it only takes a little bit of effort to get camped underneath that infield pop-up and be ready to make that out. So they call the batter out automatically as soon as it leaves the bat pretty much, and they say infield fly rule, batter is out, and therefore the force out is now dead in the infield. So now no runners have to advance whether the ball is caught or not. And so this solves that problem of saying, hey, now the runners don't have to go anywhere on this pop-up and they're not going to be caught in a needless double or triple play if the infielders let it drop. So whether the infielder lets that pop-up drop or catches it, the batter is already out no matter what. It could drop, the batter's still out. They could catch the pop-up, the batter is still out, and no one has to advance. So that, at the core of it, is why the infield fly rule exists. It prevents this loophole sort of thing from happening where every pop-up with multiple runners on base in a force-out situation, it would pretty much always result in a double or triple play, and that was not good for baseball. So that's why the infield fly rule and this automatically calling the batter out, that's why this rule makes a lot of sense. So real quick, let's summarize before I explain on an actual ball field. Let's explain all the preconditions for the infield fly rule. So number one, there must be less than 2 outs. So 1 out or 0 outs. There has to be runners on first and second or the base is loaded. The infield fly rule is not in effect with second and third, a runner only on second, a runner only on first, or a runner only on third. It has to be first and second or the base is loaded. That's multiple runners where there's a force out situation. Balls that are subject to the infield fly have to be hit up into the air. They can't be bunts and they can't be line drives. Line drives are hit pretty much like a rocket. Anything that's hit up in the air is going to be available in the umpire's discretion to potentially be called for an infield fly. Next, the infielder doesn't have to catch the ball for the batter to be out. Again, the batter is going to be called automatically out as soon as the umpire makes this call. So the batter doesn't have to run to first base, and the infield could let the ball drop or they could accidentally let it drop, and the runner is out the same way. So the batter is out no matter if they catch it or they don't. Next, all the runners can still advance. This is why you wouldn't necessarily want to let the ball drop automatically as an infielder because it might have some weird spin, it might hit a rock, and it might bounce away where the runners could actually advance to the next base. So even though the batter is called automatically out, the runners can still advance at their own discretion if they want to. The ball is not dead. So say the runner on first decided he did want to go off the base and the pop-up falls and it bounces and it hits the runner in the leg. The runner will be called out. So they can only be safe if they're actually touching the base. So again, runners have the discretion to leave the base on an infield fly, but they don't have to. But if they do get touched with the ball while it's in fair territory, they'll be called out. And lastly, a fair ball is the only one that can be called for an infield fly. Foul balls do not apply. So next, let's go into why an umpire would want to call an infield fly and why they might say, oh, this one is not subject to it. This can be a little bit tricky to understand. And the one thing to definitely understand is that an infield fly rule can be called when the ball's not in the infield. It can be, 10 feet into the outfield. This is the umpire's discretion. And a ball doesn't have to be sky high. It could be slightly lower. It can't be a line drive. But let's talk through a couple of the reasons that a humpback liner or a short blooper into the outfield wouldn't be the infield fly rule, but a pop-up that makes it into the outfield might. So the main scenario that we're trying to prevent with the infield fly rule is this one. So say it's runners on first and second base, and I'm playing short, and there's a pop-up hit overhead, and there's no one out, right? So I'm camped under it. I go, I got it. And then, being smart, I go, boom, I let it drop. I run over, I tag this runner out, I step on second base, and that's an easy double play. And basically their inning is ruined, right? So if there's one out, the inning would be over. And if there was no one out, the whole threat that they had going is now pretty much dead. So that's what the infield fly rule is mainly trying to prevent. That just cheap, really easy double play that just doesn't feel right, doesn't feel like a good part of baseball. Now, one of the key pieces of language in the actual rule is that the infielder needs to give ordinary effort to basically catch the ball. So that means if I'm playing short and there's a ball hit in shallow left, which this happens all the time, and I run back and I'm camped, I'm camped onto this one here, the umpire can still call this an infield fly because with easy, ordinary effort, I'm camped underneath it, and everything I just discussed before, I can still let this drop, toss it right to second, and then right to first for an easy double play, or right to third to second for a double play that way. So it doesn't have to be in the infield proper. It can be close, basically as long as the infielder is camped underneath it. Now, this distinction is really important because we don't want to call the runner out, which is what the infield fly rule does. When the infield fly rule in baseball or softball is called, the batter is automatically out, which means none of the runners are now pushed to the next base via the force out rules. So we don't want to automatically call a runner out when they hit maybe like a humpback liner, and I may or may not catch it in the outfield. That's not what the infield fly rule is designed for. The infield fly rule is designed for, again, the infielder basically camped underneath it where the hitter, again, whether it's baseball or softball, is pretty much a guaranteed out. But if the out is not guaranteed, like I'm still going back on it and I might not get there, that's not ordinary effort, and the infield fly rule would not apply. This is why it doesn't apply to bunts, because they happen so fast. Even if you pop up a bunt, it's going to happen so fast that it's not really going to be this situation where you can make that easy double play. And line drives would never be infield fly because they're hit so hard, they're going to be a hit a lot of the time. You would never want to call the batter automatically out when they hit a line drive, or even like a humpback liner. That's not a pop-up. So as umpires watch this develop, so say it's bases loaded and one out, or first and second and one out, they're going to watch the pop-up go up, and they're going to be ready to call infield fly, but they're going to wait and see what happens. Is it drifting into the corner where they might not catch it? They don't want to call the batter automatically out, so they won't call the infield fly rule. But they're looking for the same thing I just mentioned, which is an infielder camped underneath it? Are they going to make this play? Is it pretty much a certain out for the batter? That's the main distinction for calling an infield fly rule in baseball or softball. But you might be asking yourself, why can't we have the infield fly rule with just a runner on first base? Couldn't we get an easy double play when there's just a runner on first base and less than 2 outs? Well, the answer is no, so let me explain. When there's only a runner on first, this scenario doesn't really happen. You're like, yes, okay, well, couldn't they just throw to second and throw to first? Yes, hypothetically, but the batter's job when they hit this pop-up is basically to run to first base. That's their only job at that point. They could certainly be super lazy and just walk and not get down here, but in almost all scenarios, the runner is going to get to first base, which means if they let the pop-up drop, at most, they're going to flip it to second to get me, the base runner, out at second base, or I'm just going to retreat and be right here, and if they catch it, I'm here. If they let it drop and they toss a second, I'm out. And now the runner or the hitter, my place. So when there's only a runner on first, it's really just a human exchange. Either I'm out and the runner and the batter is safe at first, or the batter is out and I'm safe at first if they drop the pop-up. So there's no real scenario The only scenario in which you get a double play on a dropped pop-up with a runner at first is if the batter just does not run and they realize this, and then they toss to second and throw to first to get both of us out. But again, unless your batter is a terrible person, that's not going to happen. So hopefully this explanation of the infield fly rule, which exists both in baseball and in softball, was helpful, because obviously this can be a confusing rule, especially for beginner players and coaches, and especially if you're watching Major League Baseball or something on TV, where you might say, hey, why is that batter not allowed to run to first base when they hit the ball in the infield? What's the deal? What's going on? This rule makes a lot of sense because, again, it just prevents a team's really strong offensive inning, first and second, one out, bases loaded, no one out. It prevents that inning from getting pretty much destroyed by one pop-up where the infield could play, they could play it smart, let it drop, and get an easy double or triple play. We don't want that to happen. That's the reason that the infield fly rule exists. So it prevents the force out situation on balls that are hit high in the air, where ordinary effort is what's needed to catch this ball. So basically the infielder's camped, and it's not going to be a problem to catch that pop-up. Therefore, the offensive team, the batting team, shouldn't be penalized every time they hit a pop-up when there's multiple runners on base. So if you enjoyed this video, definitely subscribe to my channel. Check out the description links below, where you'll find my other basic baseball videos, including a really detailed video about balks, because balk rules can be really complicated. You'll also find my baseball books, my online courses if you're new to the game and you want to learn more about how to be a great pitcher, or more coaching tools, warm-up routines, all that good stuff. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you here in the next video.